Hello and welcome to the third episode of Coding Coffee with me, Francis Peck. This episode, it's going to start to be fun. I hope, definitely. At least fun for me. We're going to start and try and get some user input data. And to do that, we'll use the package Flask WTF. So we're here right back where we left off last time. I pushed this to the repository of Between Two Cracks, so you can see episode 2 and 1 right over there. Last time we also had a look at the grep command. Where was that one? Okay, I'll delete my command line that you do with Ctrl U, then Ctrl R to search and grep. It's not doing it. Okay, then we'll just repeat the command. So pip freeze, then the pipe symbol, and grep Flask, which will show us all the Flask packages installed. And the last one is the one we need. Flask-WF version 1.0.1. We'll add this to our requirements file to keep track of. Perfect. And now we'll start using it. Let's first look up the documentation. So as you're building tools and making packages and using a lot of open source programs, because that's really something you shouldn't forget. A lot of the world's software today uses open source programs because you do need a license to use them. You can only use them in certain ways, but you usually don't need to pay for it. So a lot of the common kind of tasks programmers, developers, system administrators, DevOps need to do, it's so nice to put some effort in packaging that and then building communities around it. So basically, as we're going through these tutorials, I consider these open source programs my sponsors. And if ever I'm able to make any kind of money with this project, some of that should flow, to those open source projects if they make this kind of sponsoring back available. Flask WTF. Who knows what the WTF stands for? I did do my best to try and find it out. Really didn't. Maybe wrap transform forms. Who knows? If somebody does know, please leave a comment down below. The important thing is knowing how to install it. Actually, it should be installed on your Python anywhere system. If it is not, you just do pip install flask WTF, capitals, and then that equals sign 1.0.1. Let's see if this works. It should basically say requirement already satisfied, because here it's already installed. If it isn't, if you're getting an error like can't find module or something like that later on, go back to the shell. Again, to go to the shell, you have the dashboard, and here you click on bash. So this in theory now should give us back the same environment. Just need to go back to the folder, so cd change directory between two cracks. Git status should show us file we just added, exactly, requirements. Well, we didn't add it, but we added the Flask WTF to it. So that's why it shows it's modified. At some point, we're going to commit this to save this version for our episode 3. Let's get back to Flask WTF. Integrates the WTF forms, and that includes having the CS or F. That's important to give some security when you're getting user data, that it's truly coming from somebody that's on your domain, that's going to your website. In our case, somebody on this website provides this data and not from somewhere else, because then you're exposed to cross-site attacks. So this is really something for security. It also allows file uploads and reCAPTCHAs, again, a security measure to check that you're dealing with a human. We don't want bots on our system. Bots don't drink coffee anyway. When you go into the documentation, usually you will find some kind of quick tutorial. Well, of course, the installation. So let's go to creating forms. And how do we quick start it? It's showing everything here. You can basically just copy this. And now we're going to our own project. So going to files. In our Between Two Cracks directory, the Flask app that we had. And now usually the imports, so we were only working with the Flask class from the Flask module. That was our first and only import. Now we're adding some imports, basically saying, import this Flask WTF module, and then we want a string field, and we want to indicate that data is required. So we now have a simple form that has one field, a way of providing a name. Let's go back to the documentation, as it also shows what should be inside of the templates. That's the one here. If your form has multiple hidden fields, you can render them in one block. We're not yet working with hidden tags, so we'll just take this. We'll already save this. And of course, that's now something to put in our template, which means we actually need to start rendering the template, and that is something that they are not showing here in their documentation, which is a pity. It might be in the next segment. So here they kind of show you how they would render a template, but we actually need the render template command from Flask. So basically, before we had only used the string, so we were returning just a string. We want to replace this with a render template, and A template is a file. In this case, we'll just say form HTML. We have the my form that we took from the documentation. And it's not a mitochondrial form, it's just my form. Now, what we have here is a class. So in programming, you have a class to theoretically describe what that object, when it's instantiated from the class, should do. So it's quite theoretical. So usually you don't use a class as itself, but you instantiate it. And instantiating it is very similar to calling a function. You're basically telling the computer that class describes theoretically something that I would like to do. Make an object of it. Well, it's an object, just ones and zeros, but still within the universe of your computer, make an object out of it that I will then actually use to perform, to collect some data, to do what I want. So in this case, we want to assign that to a variable called form. This is my form. And the render template, it has some magic behind it that you can also just assign variable names to it. So we're saying form equals form. So send this form to this template. We have a lot of forms being written here. All right. At this point, we'll go back to our main location for the application, for the Flask application. What we now need in the same kind of directory is a subdirectory templates. That's why our console limit is reached. With the free account, you're only able to open 2 bash console. So if we go to console, you can see here actually, the one that I was previously at was still active, just that we didn't see it. Again, we're within our repository directory, application directory. We just want to say make dir, so make a directory, make a folder, that's mkdir templates. And we could use the Python Anywhere file browser, and probably we can create the directories and create files there, but we'll just say touch templates form touch.html, and touching is, it's really touching within your operating system a certain location, and just doing this magic touch will create an empty file there, which, okay, this is getting a bit too complicated. Find a way of right-clicking your files on a new tab, so we can have 2 tabs. You can easily switch. Within the folder between 2 cracks, we now have template, subdirectory, and we have that empty file that we created. And this is exactly where we now want to dump, copy paste from the quick start of Flask-WTF their initial form rendering. So we'll put this in form.html. We'll just put some additional magic around it. At this point, we're basically writing HTML. So if you weren't familiar with Python programming, You're probably not familiar with HTML either. It's kind of just annotating this very simple text files. Usually an HTML will have a head section. It will also have a body section where the majority of the web page will be located. And let's see, can we get this nicely indented? Yes. Okay. So you can see how HTML works at this point. We have what we call the tags. They match in pairs. The closing pairs has a / before the tag name. So this is a pair here, nothing in the head written at this point. And the body fragment, we have that form. Our between two cracks hello totally disappeared. Maybe that's not so nice. Let's put in an H1, which stands for header. Hello between two cracks. Okay, we didn't leave. Again, we can save this. You can do Ctrl XS, or you can push the save button there, and we can reload the website. I'm quite positive that I made a mistake and that we'll just not see anything when I'm reloading this. But hey, you know, why not start dealing with the internal server errors? They will happen sooner or later, rather sooner than later. Never be afraid of encountering any errors, as long as they communicate something to you and you know what to do with it. And now, what do we actually have to do when we have these massive errors? You probably came across them to some websites you have been using. What we need is have a look at the logs, because anything that goes wrong, especially, will be reported in one of the logs. Now, we don't find those logs within between two cracks itself, and probably not even within our home user. We have to go all the way up to the root. You saw how I was clicking here. Let me show it again just to be sure. You have here the home folder, and then just next to it, just this tiny slash, you click on it and you're in the absolute root. And we have the var folder there. That's usually where you would find some logs. We have the www. Is that a good location? That's where we have the wrapper around our application, actually. So this is still not the actual log. Which, okay, let's go back to var. Here it is. That was actually the one that I was looking for and somehow glanced over. Here we have our 3 log files having to do with our Python Anywhere Flask application running. Access is who's actually getting access. This is from the server, but at this point, let's be honest, we're just very curious of knowing about the errors. This started running way in the beginning, actually, this log. I think we probably can even see some errors from my earlier experiments. We have to go all the way down. And here's a very important runtime error. Really kind of a pity for their quick start. It should provide them some feedback, because they're not indicating the fact that we need a secret key to use CS or F. So to get that security that somebody can start randomly sending data to you from another website, we need to put this protection in place. And to do that, our application, our Flask application, needs to run with a secret that only you as a web administrator should have access to. Now we'll do a little bit of a trick to give our application a secret. Let's head back to yes, this is this file. We want basically, again, another tab to go back to the editor, same folder, Flask app, and then after the app is instantiated from that Flask class, we need to assign this secret to app that will have a config attribute. So when you have a class that's instantiated into an object, so just like our myForm class has been made into the form object, the Flask class is used to instantiate a Flask object called app, and that has a config sub-object, which kind of works like a dictionary. You can save items in there, and what we want to save now to be able to use our form is a secret key. Now we can just do 1, 2, 3. Probably. That's probably not secure enough, but heck, let's just give it a try. Let's see what happens when we gave that secret key to our application. If we now reload this, it worked. But everybody knows my secret key, but at least we already got this far. All right. Name Francis. Go. Method is not allowed. So we're not getting an internal server error. We're getting a very specific announcement here. And the reason is we said earlier, we need this root, our main root, but the internet expects that to be regular calls. And a regular call would be get. Get me that web page. That's just what it stands for. We're using the same function to send our form back to. But when you're sending data in a form, you're not saying, you're sending something. So you're actually what we then call posting it. And so that method is known as a post. So, okay, continue. It's still complaining. It's Still not allowed. Imagine that. The big question is, we saved it. Did we reload it? Okay, here we are again. Third time is the charm. And we're not getting the error anymore. It's not looking interesting, but we're not getting an error anymore. Actually, if we now go back to our application, yeah, okay. So this is when you get an error. There's also the regular server lock. I'm quite curious. I haven't... Well, somebody is announcing loyalty to the Emperor. That is very intriguing. Now what I'm going to try and do is print and I'm not going to print it at just any time. So when a person gets here at this location, our root location, he's getting there with the get methods, and we want to return our form template with the form inside. When he's already there and he's actually posting the form, we want to add some extra magic. So first we need to know if request methods equals posts. So if you're running this function not for simple get but for post, then form name data, then just print it. Okay, so we're saving this again, reloading. I often make this mistake myself, you will too. We go back to the website. Ha! Oh, and now it just keeps giving errors. If the request method equals form name data. So we have to again go to our fabulous error log all the way to the bottom, and the name request is not defined. That's a very appropriate comment. The computer is always right. We have to be humble programmers. Computer simply does not make a mistake unless it's a quantum computer. Now, this request object, we need to import that also from the Flask framework. It's a bit of magic, so we're kind of importing that in the file, and any function within the file is then able to access that. It's not very Pythonic in the sense it's a global variable within your module, but it's actually going to be instantiated by the web server, making it available to the function that is then running. So now this should again be active, and yet somehow it is not. So we're again checking. request, save, and reloads. Okay. And check. So either the save didn't go ahead, or something else. Darn it. Let's add some extra text. We're back at the same place. But the question now is, did this end up being printed at some place? Alright, so that's not, it shouldn't be an error. Only when you have an error is something being saved there. If you now go to the server log, will we only see the emperor at the bottom? No. No. Announcing his loyalty to the emperor. So, okay. I am not following the emperor. Go. And back to the log. I am not following the emperor. Rightly so. I follow the light side. So, kind of already now saw how data ends up on our server just by doing a print. Let's add some other magic. Let's add a password. To get to the password, there's actually, next to having a string field, there's also a password field. And we can just instantiate it this way. Password field equals password validators. So the validators are basically saying, when this form comes back, do something with it. We're actually not testing this yet at this point. Okay. Okay. So if we do this, save, and reloading it, let's reload it. We'll just check our server is not down, but we don't see the password field yet. Of course, there's a very good reason for that. And that's that we now also have to go back to our template where it's being rendered. As you could see here, it accessed that. And we want to now just add this element for the passwords. Again, saving it, reloading it. All right, and then seeing if we didn't break it. No, not only did we not break it, we can now say Francis, what is my magical password? Now, that's nice actually. It will delete the password. We now actually see what's happening when we click go. Can we also read the password in the backend. So just add this for passwords data. Save. You have to just reload. Okay, so we send that back to the server. The big question is, how secure is the password? Can you guess? Francis Peck. So, an important lesson, even when in the front end, you seem to have a very secure hidden password. And even when you have a secured connection, which this is troubling, it's a pity that this connection does not look secure. That might be something that we forgot to activate. We'll have a look at this in a second. At any rate, whether this is with a secured connection here, yes or no, the person that programmed the website in the backend has full access to what you put in a password field. So if this person isn't well intentioned and you reuse a password from other sites, they can just hack your identity. So be very careful. That's the important lesson I hope you get from episode 3, and seeing how we already get to sending data from a user in the front end to the back end. Although at this point we're not doing anything fancy with it. But if you now, for your own application, you can go wild and you can start adding other fields here. For example, coffee. And then just go to that form and add coffee there too. You can start collecting data about coffee. It wouldn't be very nice. It would be just sitting there in the backend, in the log, but you would be collecting it. Just before wrapping up this episode, I won't save this now here though, but we'll go and have a look at our web app. Yes, we do want to leave it. All right. Force HTTPS enabled. Okay. So, okay, and we have to reload it to enable that. Let's see. And now we have a secured connection. All right. So you can see here, we have the lock. You could also see, so we have the lock, you know, we typed a password, you couldn't see it, no one else can see it except for the back-end developer. So if we now go back to our log where we're printing Francis not so secret 123, which brings us back to one thing I also wanted to do still in this episode, which is the general secret. I cannot leave it like this, of course. If this errors, everybody knows that my Flask app secret is 123. But what can I type here so that it isn't? All right. Let me just pop up a bash console here. To do that, I need to close one of my two consoles. This is now closed. Now I don't want to upgrade it. Okay. Okay, let's get out of here. Open it again. I should have closed. Exactly. I closed my console, so I can open another one here. I can just type Python, gets me into a Python environment. So I want to get a secret that it will change every time the Flask application is launched, but for the duration of that executable running, it will be, of course, the same. So I kind of want to just ask the computer, give me a temporary secret. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to be valid as long as the same server is running. So how we do this is we import OS, standing for the operating system. So that's the module operating system. Within that module, you have a random string generator. We'll ask 12 characters. You can see that there. And we'll ask to have it displayed as a hex. All right. Now replacing this here. Saving it. Reloading the website. We no longer have the 123 key. All right. and something went wrong. Okay. What could it be? Something quite early is going wrong. I know it, I know. So here I did the import OS, but this doesn't know about OS. I'm saying, make my secret from the operating system Python module, but I didn't say, please import it. So this is a, when you're familiar with programming in Flask, you'll then recognize this like, oh, something went wrong. So even if I go to my error log, well, it will also say OS is not defined, but you can already kind of spot it just by the error message in your browser. So if you now save this here, we reload it. Okay, I bet you it will be working now, as I promised. All right. Backend is still receiving the messages. You have to go back to the server log. And it's, well, it is very much secret now. I hope you learned several things during this episode. But, it might look like just a very tiny step, but this is a huge leap. Almost any activity that you're doing on the internet involves filling in forms or clicking. click and clickbait, but really a lot of your interactions is providing data. Is also logging in, providing your passwords. Now you see how easy it is to handle that in a backend. How many of the web developers can you trust? You really don't, you can't, because you don't even know most of them. Now you know how to collect passwords and any other kinds of fields. We just touched the string field, but you can ask for integers, numbers, checkboxes. We'll all get to that in good time. See you in episode 4.